Ever since I was a little boy, I've always wanted to be a dad. I didn't get a chance to have that with my daughter. I think if there was anything I regret to this day, is not being a dad to her.
They took moments away from me. Like, you see how a kid and their father are in the park or whatever and they're having fun. I never had that with my father.
What you think? 5 years of just knowing a guy, that's it. That's your father. You get to know a person through a lifetime.
Here comes the sale coming right there.
In the 1970s, police watched deals like this all over New York City.
There goes the stuff. Boom. I can't see what it is. Looks like it could be pills.
The drug trade drove the crime rate, making New York the most dangerous city in the nation.
Rockefeller arrived for work at the Capitol.
Republican Governor Nelson Rockefeller targeted what he thought was the root of the problem.
The hard drug pusher destroys lives just as surely and far more cruelly than the cold-blooded killer.
He introduced the country's first mandatory drug sentences. One day before they took effect, ABC's Ann Medina gave this report.
Today, a person in New York charged with sale or possession of hard drugs could end up with a 1 to 6 year sentence. Tomorrow, however, when the new law goes into effect, that same person will get a mandatory life sentence with no parole for 15 years.
Anyone caught with 4 ounces of cocaine or heroin, an amount that fits in your pocket, faced 15 years in prison. The tough sentences would become known as the Rockefeller drug laws.
The army of the condemned, 1,000.
Within a decade, the number of people in prisons for drug crimes in New York State would rise from 1,500 to 8,000.
The prison population is growing at 12% a year, too fast.
During the 80s, Robert Sanchez was growing up in the Wagner Housing Project in East Harlem.
By then, a new drug was sweeping the city streets: cocaine.
Growing up in New York City during the 1980s was a huge, huge challenge. So you could go down any block and find a spot. A spot is where they sell drugs.
Robert was 17 when he married his high school sweetheart, Sarah. He went to community college at night, and within months they were expecting a baby. The pressure of having to support a child got Robert interested in the neighborhood trade.
I was thinking about selling drugs. I was thinking about making a couple of extra dollars. At the time, I was living at home with my mom, and things were rough for her. You know, I would look into the refrigerator, there was nothing there but a can of beer. I didn't want my daughter living like that. I didn't want her struggling like that from the beginning, like I did. I wanted to break the cycle.
Robert started hanging out at the apartment of a neighborhood drug dealer.
He said, well, why don't you hang out with me and you can see if you can do it. You can make a couple of dollars, and after that you can just, make a decision. What do you want to do?
Before Robert could make that decision, police raided the dealer's apartment. They found Robert and 1,500 vials of crack. They weren't his drugs, so Robert took his case to trial.
In any courtroom you go to, you see that large "In God We Trust" sign. And I kept saying, I'm gonna trust God, I'm gonna trust God.
Under New York law, just being in the apartment made him guilty of drug possession. The jury convicted Robert, and he was sentenced to 15 years in prison.
15 years? I'm 19 at the time. What do I know about 15 years? I can't even think back. At the time, I couldn't even think back 15 years. And you're telling me to look forward 15 years.
That was the minimum sentence under the Rockefeller drug laws. The judge had no choice.
There are stories of judges sitting on the bench in tears about what they have to do because they took an oath to support the Constitution and obey the laws. They can resign their job if they want, but they don't want. And the effect is that they're paralyzed.
Crystal, Robert's daughter, was born during his first month in prison.
She looks so cute there. It had a deep impact on my family. For my mother, I would say that it had the deepest impact on her. I mean, she lost a son to prison.
I cried, but not in front of him. When you see your children in jail, and all of a sudden you just appear, we're the victims too. We're the victims out here.
Soon Robert's only visitor was his mother, Carmen. After 2 years, he and his wife divorced.
This is one of the only pictures I have with her and her mom.
And after that, the visits became less frequent. Eventually, Robert and Crystal grew apart.
She knew me as Daddy, but for her, Daddy was a stranger. How am I going to establish a relationship with my daughter twice a year? Can't do it. No possible way.
Help us change the drug laws.
During the 90s, a movement to reform the laws began, and Robert's face showed up on posters protesting the harsh penalties. Demonstrators began to speak out against the tough, mandatory sentences.
Whites and Latinos, we're all here marching together. It may be cold outside, but it's not as cold as the Rockefeller laws are.
But the demonstrations had no effect. Inside Sing Sing prison, Robert was falling into a deep depression. In 1997, a filmmaker captured Robert reading the first poem he'd written in prison.
My eyelids flutter open and expose my vision to a deep darkness that is yet identifiable. Scanning the darkness for familiar shapes, I notice the haunting shadow which encloses me night and day. Bars. I hear not the radios which occasionally play.
In 1984, the federal government followed Rockefeller's lead and passed its version of the mandatory minimums. Eric Sterling worked for Congress and helped write the federal laws.
The mandatory minimums were said to be about giving the Justice Department the tools to go after the highest level traffickers. That's what members of Congress said specifically. Unfortunately, tragically, it hasn't worked out that way.
In the neighborhood of Washington Heights, Oliver, Ruth, Jr., and Wendell Hedion were another family torn apart by the Rockefeller drug laws. Oliver Hedion Sr. left Ecuador in 1987 to find a better life for his family in New York City. He made $1,500 a month as a superintendent, but it wasn't enough to give his children a life of privilege. He started selling drugs.
What I tried to do was for them to try to give you a better life in the wrong way.
In March 1994, police searched Oliver Hedion's mother's apartment. They found 4 ounces of cocaine. Hedion decided to take his chances in court.
My lawyer told me, we got a 99% to win and 1% to lose, and I lose for that 1%.
He was convicted of drug possession and sentenced to 15 years to life. His son Wendell watched as he was taken away.
He just gets up and they take him away. And I was crying. I'm like, what are you doing? You should come home. And then the judge was like, they said, take them out of here.
There are more children separated by imprisonment of parents now, affected by that, than there are by divorce and separation of parents. It's the single largest reason for the separation of children from parents. There are probably 10 or 15 million children in the last 30 years who've had a parent separated because of imprisonment.
That year, Gideon became one of 23,000 drug criminals incarcerated in New York State. His wife, Ruth, was left to raise 3 sons on her own. She struggled to support them, and finally, the Gideon children were forced into foster care.
One day I just remember some lady called, named Miss Dixon. She came over and she said, hey, you guys need to get some clothes and come with us.
I'll never forget that woman because she hit me with a pair of keys on my head to make me stop crying. And my grandmother said, don't take away my sons, don't take away my grandsons or whatever. They took us anyway. And the last thing I remember was my grandmother in the living room watching us getting taken away.
As the boys grew up, they moved from foster family to foster family. Wendell remembers begging his dad to come home. He said his foster parents beat him.
I used to tell my foster parents, I wish my father was here because he'll, smack you or punch you in your face. And he would. And they'll just make fun of me like, your father's not coming at no time soon, making fun of me. And I'm like, you watch, you'll see. Watch, you're going to see what's going to happen to you. But nothing never happened.
What happened to the Gideon family happens to kids every day. Psychologists say there's a generation of children being traumatized by the incarceration of their parents.
You can speak in general terms about having your father or mother absent, losing them very suddenly under shocking circumstances. Police come in and take them away, and you didn't know anything about the fact that they were dealing drugs. It's in the same category as other losses and separations that happen traumatically. And the reaction of kids is very similar to what you see in post-traumatic syndromes, responses to earthquakes, tsunamis, war, airplane crashes, 9/11.
I miss him, but it's hard trying to have your father, deal with your father not there, not by your side.
Can you tell me why it's hard?
Because now my mother got to play both parts, mom and dad.
In Arm's Reach is an after-school mentoring program that helps children cope with the loss of an imprisoned parent.
Art itself is used in therapy right now, especially for children. Some of them can't express themselves verbally, and sometimes they're unconscious of what's bothering them, so all the stuff comes out in art.
It's creepy. He said, anytime when he comes out, we can go and do stuff, and go fishing by our own foot, take off the scales and stuff. Do all of that.
When is he coming out?
I don't know. He said he's going to talk to the judge to see if he's going to come out soon.
The program tries to keep these children out of trouble and off the streets.
They get into problems more easily. Also, the feeling of not being able to interact with their father is not easy. Just missing their fathers is causing them a lot of pressure and troubles.
Oliver Jr., the oldest Gideon's son, reacted to the pressure of losing his father by getting in trouble on the streets. He kept running away from his foster parents to the only family he knew on West 164th Street in Washington Heights. With no authority figure around, he was forced to raise himself.
If I could do whatever the fuck I want and my family's not there to say no, well then I'ma do it. Like, I would stay up and sell drugs for 2-3 days straight. At 13, 14.
In 2003, Oliver Jr. was busted for selling cocaine. He was sentenced to 4 years in prison. He would be the first son to follow in his father's footsteps. Without a dad, the other brothers did the best they could. But a year later, Wendell stabbed a neighborhood bully for beating up his younger brother.
The knife went so deep, right? I said that's good enough, so I just took it out, and all his friends, because this guy was, you know, he was a little pusher or whatever. He thought he was a gangster. So his friends came, yo, what's this? And then I came out with another knife and I said, come on. If you want to die, come over here. I'm gonna stab you too. And then they moved back. And I picked up my little brother that was getting beat up and took him home.
Brian, the youngest Gideon brother, would be the only one who escaped prison. By 2004, Oliver Sr., Oliver Jr., and Wendell Gideon were all in prison at the same time.
There's a number that's thrown around that the children of prisoners have a 6-time greater risk of becoming prisoners themselves. If you go into a juvenile detention facility, kids who are criminals, and you ask them, they've all had a parent or an older brother in prison.
It's not often that you get a chance to see yourself as the agent of a kind of social catastrophe. You know, most of us aren't in the position where our lives have the impact that hundreds of thousands of people have suffered from what you've done. And it hurts me very much. It's the reason I feel so strongly about it is in part my role in this, and I'm part of the reason why I feel so strongly is I want these laws to change before I die.
Help us change the drug laws.
The federal law remained on the books, but in 2004, after 30 years of public outcry in New York State,
well, this is my son. He's been incarcerated for 8 years.
A different Republican governor finally listened. George Pataki reformed the Rockefeller drug laws. He cut the 15-year minimum to 8.5 years, and he doubled the amount of drugs needed to trigger the mandatory sentence. Oliver Gideon was released under the reforms, but after more than a decade behind bars, his sons barely recognized him.
Yeah, I know when people get older, your appearance change, but I didn't see him change. Last time I saw him, I was 8 years old. He had black hair, he was skinny built. Now he's old, fat, and out of shape, and that's not my father. Who is he?
Since Oliver Sr. left prison, he's remarried and makes $8 an hour as a laborer. He says he still wants to father his sons. Wendell is the only one who acknowledges him, and every week they meet in the old neighborhood. But their meetings are tense.
To me, he's a stranger. I can't even sit with him and have like a conversation because we'll always end up arguing.
You do understand because I speak to you on the phone and I tell you.
Okay. Tell me. Tú vas a tratar de ahora, tú me dijiste que vas a estudiar, ¿no? Eso
Yeah,
me
because I don't want to live here no more.
Ahora, exactamente. Yo no te voy a forzar a que tú vengas a vivir para acá. Okay. Mi pregunta es, ¿vas a estudiar en el verano en la escuela para tratar de pasar? Okay, that's all. That's
and I told you that 3 times.
I don't hurt you, okay? Because you think I have a lot of problems. You know, my mind is working out.
That's
with
why
the
I don't
things,
tell
you know?
you nothing because that's why I say handle your business. I handle mine.
I don't got any problem with me.
So why you say that I have issues?
My big problem is you and your brothers, you know, and especially you.
Oliver Sr. just wants to be a dad and look after his sons. But Wendell is too angry to let him.
No,
I don't need it.
Lo que te voy a dar mañana, cógelo ahora. Eso es lo que tengo. Coge esos 22 pesos para que compres el pavo.
I don't need it right now, man.
Entonces yo te lo voy a dar cuando tú lo necesites. Ahí yo tengo que verte. Mami, ¿eh? Téngame.
No, man.
Tome, papi, cójalo, mijo.
I don't want to embarrass you. Stop it.
Mañana va a ir allá a la conexión.
Yes, yeah.
Yo digo, ¿para qué vas a ir si te lo puedo dar hoy? Dime tú. Don't make a scene.
Who the fuck are you to tell us anything? He's just fucking, oh, don't sell drugs, don't do this, oh, don't smoke weed, don't do this. It's not like he's been there, he's fucking like provided for us the whole time. We barely know this motherfucker anymore. We don't know this motherfucker. Why should we even listen to him?
Right now I am his enemy because I say the truth. One day he gonna realize what I say was right and what he do was wrong.
On March 18, 2007, Oliver Jr.'s best friend was shot dead in Washington Heights. He was a neighborhood drug dealer. Oliver says that's just the code of the streets.
God already has the day you're gonna die. You can't avoid it. I know the rules. That's the rules. Either you get killed or you go to jail. It's one of the two. The rules never changed.
Sobre aguas de reposo me pastoreará, confortará mi alma en lugares de justicia. Oh Padre Santo, ayúdame, Padre mío lindo, Señor. Bendice mi familia, Señor, bendice mis hijos.
Robert Sanchez got out in 2003 after serving his full 15 years. He still has no contact with his daughter. All he has are old letters from a 12-year-old girl.
I miss you a lot. I'm going to see you soon. Love always, Crystal. About a year ago, she said, you know, you're not my father. My father is the person who raised me, who cared for me, who gave me sneakers when I needed them, and who did A, B, and C for me. You're not my father. You're just Robert to me. And that hurt a lot. It hurt me a whole bunch. She doesn't really understand what I've been through and why I went through what I went through.
Robert hasn't given up. He still tries to reach out.
Tonight's her birthday, and I just want to let her know that I'm thinking about her on her birthday, and that, you know, that I just want to talk to her and wish her a happy birthday, and hope that this might be the last one I spent away from her. Hey, Sarah, what's up? How are you? All right. How's everything going? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, is Crystal around? She's not around? No? It's what I expected. She wasn't available. And I want to yell in the phone, you're her mom. You know what I'm saying? You're supposed to be encouraging her to have a relationship with me.
Robert's punishment wasn't only 15 years.
It bothers me now that we just don't have a relationship, because that's part of me. So every time I look at her, I'm always reminded of my prison time. I feel like that's one part of my life to this day that I'm still being punished for it. Till I can have a relationship with her, Rockefeller drug laws are always going to have me by the tail, never letting me go out of its grip.